I want to show you the severity of Trump possibly winning another term. I think he'll win another term, but not because he's the best person for it, but because my Democratic Party seems to be unable to stop tripping over their own feet. They're really making Trump, who's a moron, look like a genius. But hopefully it's not too late. I think it's too late to stop him from winning a second term, but hopefully I'm wrong. But I want to show people something. Let me start off with the people who co-signed Trump's immigration war. They remind me of this lady, like many who can't see that they're next. She's been in foster homes, had foster parents and such, and she lives in public assisted housing these days. But she co-signed with Trump attacking immigrants. She says immigrants are sucking up benefits meant for us. Partially blind to the fact that Trump is cutting her stuff as well. And I say partially blind because she has complained about Trump cutting this and cutting that. But, like a suicide bomber, as long as Trump gets those immigrants, she doesn't mind blowing herself up too. She sees, but not that well, is what I meant by partially blind. Because of her disdain for other groups, she refuses to see who's next.
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh. Matthew Connolly is professor of history at Columbia University, principal investigator at History Lab. His recent piece for the New York Times headlined, "Why You May Never Learn the Truth About ICE." It details how the National Archives is reportedly allowing millions of documents, including many related to immigrant rights, to be expunged. Professor Matthew Connolly, welcome to Democracy Now! Lay out what you found.
Well, what I found is that the National Archives, which, as a matter of business, in the normal practice of archiving our nation's record, they have to decide what records are going to be temporary and which ones they need to preserve permanently. And normally these kinds of documents, they call them records retention schedules, are ones that almost nobody would actually read, except maybe an archivist or an historian. But in this case, it was fascinating because what I found and what others have found is that records relating to the death, the sexual assault of undocumented immigrants had been designated as temporary. In other words, these were records they decided had to be deleted after sometimes 3 years, 5 years, 10, or at most 25 years in this case. So there was a big outcry. A lot of people, in fact, tens of thousands of people spoke up in protest. Dozens of members of Congress and the Senate also voiced objections about this. But in December, the Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero, announced that they were going to go ahead anyway. They'd made some changes, but in fact, huge numbers of records relating to shoddy medical care, the civil rights violations of these undocumented immigrants, all these records are going to start to be destroyed later this year.
Problem. Not just him shredding the evidence. That's a problem, yes, but the bigger problem than that is the ones who told themselves, well, those are just immigrants. Who cares? So what? Who's next, though? You, maybe? Remember some years back when the Tea Party wanted to have slavery removed from the records in school and whatnot? Who's next?
So you write, the Department of Interior and the National Archives have decided to delete files on endangered species, offshore drilling inspections, the safety of drinking water. You also talk about, specifically when we're talking about ICE, that last month they announced that ICE could go ahead and start destroying records from Trump's first year, including the detainees' complaints about civil rights violations and shoddy medical care. Is this different from previous administrations?
It is. I would say that under this administration, things have gone much further, much faster.
Just immigrants. Who cares, right? Well, how about also getting rid of evidence concerning the environment that includes our drinking water? The people who have disdain for other groups, you have no idea what you're welcoming if Trump gets a second term. You don't like people who don't have much. You see them as useless eaters. Or you may not like Islam, they're terrorists. Or you don't like blacks or Hispanics or women, and you don't like abortion, etc., etc., so you'll co-sign Trump. You have little to no idea of what you're asking for.
I would say that under this administration, things have gone much further, much faster. I think perhaps the best example of that is how Donald Trump tears up his own papers in tiny little pieces. Now, in this case, the National Archives tried to do the right thing. They sent staff to the White House to scotch tape those papers back together again. I'm not even kidding. So what happened to
Say
them?
that again?
They went to the White House to scotch tape those pieces of paper back together again. These are our federal employees having to fish out of the trash pieces of paper that Donald Trump had left there rather than leaving a record for the rest of us. And so they scotch taped those records back together. So what happened to those people? They were fired. They were terminated.
And
So
who did they work for?
They work for the U.S. National Archives. They work for all of us, right? And this is what happened to them when they tried to stop this sort of thing. So this administration has gone further than I think any other administration before. You have to go back to the Nixon White House to see anything like it.
And he fires them for doing the right thing. The disdain for other groups is going to get us all in big trouble. The vote. Your disdain for other groups also includes you folks who are independent-minded, Green Party libertarian-minded, who will assist in the problem because you don't like red or blue. So you'll give your vote to one of these miscellaneous parties that doesn't stand a chance. That's a problem. So this was just a reminder or to raise awareness about the severity if this guy gets a second term. Will he be shredding things about you next?